And she read my chart, and she actually said, Western astrology. She said, Scorpio is in your career chart. Scorpio represents the Middle East. You need to go to Dubai for your career to start. You can never say, I've learned everything there is about Feng Shui. I've learned everything there is about astrology. I'm done. It doesn't work like that. You learn from your practice. You learn from seeing clients. You learn from the examples. You never stop learning. So that's the biggest lesson I have for you. Because I can tell you in Southeast Asia, be it Thailand or Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia to a certain extent, people, and Philippines, people will always consult with Feng Shui Hong Kong, as you know. People will always consult with Feng Shui masters before they build a major project.
We want to take a moment and thank Halm Collectives, the stunning space that hosts Season 2 of the Design Pod.
From its beautifully designed interiors to the energy it brings, Halm truly reflects the creative spirit behind our conversations. We are grateful to be recording in a space that feels so aligned with our vision.
More than just a location, Halm Collective is also a home to a reformer studio, a private boutique gym, and a charming cafe. A full experience built around design, wellness, and community.
Thank you guys from Halm Collective for making this season possible. Hi, Shat.
Hi, Valeria.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
How's your week going?
My week was good, interesting. I started to pack. I'm traveling next week.
Wow, that's exciting.
Yes, a lot of exciting things happening now in this time.
Well, just to top up on this excitement, we have a really fascinating guest today.
I know.
A guest whose journey crossed a lot of disciplines, from medicine to broadcasting journalism to book writing. I would like to welcome Jin Peh today, who is a Feng Shui master. And welcome, Jin. It's a real pleasure to have you here with us. We have a lot of questions to cover today.
Finally, some Feng Shui in our lives.
Yeah,
I think we need it.
We need those tips for sure today.
Jin, just as Valeria said, you've been a little bit everywhere, and we have had the chance to speak a little bit before the camera started to roll, and it just shows how fascinating of a person you are. Medical, journalism, Feng Shui. How did that come along, and how did you get there? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So
and how did you end up in the Middle East as well, on top of everything?
It's all there. Oh, God. Okay, so I was born in Kuala Lumpur, and then I moved to Singapore as a child, and then sadly, my father had a problem with the government, so we moved to Australia when I was a teenager. So that's where I started my medical training. Of course, my generation, a little bit older than you, our parents always wanted us to be doctors, lawyers, accountants, architects, you get the drift, engineers. So I did that for my mother, and of course, in those days, to get into medical school, it was just straight out results. No interviews, no medical entrance exams, etc., etc. So in those days in Australia, medicine was a 6-year degree. And I was a bit precocious, and I got into medical school when I was like 16 years and 9 months. And so...
early?
Yeah, I know.
Very
Because I skipped a year when I went to Australia from Singapore. So... what does a 17-year-old, 16-year-old know about the future? Nothing. And then, of course, by the time it was my second last year, I realized that it wasn't what I wanted to do, but I already given 6 years of my life to medicine, and I was like, no, I'm not leaving without a degree. So I gritted my teeth, and I finished that last year. And I can tell my mother, yes, your son's a doctor, let's move on.
Yeah.
So that's how I finished medical school. And I did my year as an intern in Australia as well. So I was registered with the West Australian Medical Board. But when it became obvious that, I wasn't going to continue on, I just became fully retired. So that's medicine. So I always wanted to write, and I was interested in presenting on television. So I auditioned for the West Australian Academy of Performing Arts, the broadcasting journalism class, which only takes 18 people every year. And interestingly enough, Hugh Jackman is also a graduate from that academy. But he was a few years before me. And,
interesting.
A few of my colleagues, but 2 of them specifically became famous in Australia. One is, in my year, one is an Aboriginal newscaster called Narelle Jacobs. She was my classmate. And another one is also a newsreader called Mimi Kwa, who's also my friend and classmate. So, so that was what I did. So when I was in the Academy of Performing Arts and doing broadcasting journalism, that was when I became interested in Feng Shui. So Are we ready for the story?
Yes, we're all
are.
ears.
So when we moved to Australia, we lived in an apartment overlooking the Swan River in Perth. And everything was going wrong. My parents divorced. My two sisters couldn't hold down a relationship. My brother also had a lot of drama with his girlfriend. So we were all very unhappy in that apartment.
In that particular place.
In that apartment building, in that apartment. We had a 2-story apartment with a beautiful view of the river. But it was way before its time because back in the 80s, there were no apartments in that place. It was a very lonely building. So in 1997, I had an argument with my sister because, you know, she was coming from Singapore. She wanted to stay there for a few weeks, and it was just too stressful. And then she got angry that I wouldn't let her stay in the family apartment, blah, blah, blah. So my second sister, I have 2 sisters and a younger brother. And my second sister said, look, Jin, we don't know anything about Feng Shui, but there's something very wrong with this apartment because since we moved in, everything's gone wrong. You need to have the Feng Shui of this apartment looked at. So I had some introduction to Feng Shui as a kid in Singapore. We can go back there. But then I was like, okay, in those days there was no internet, you know, there was no Google. So I looked up the white pages. Remember the white pages?
Yes.
So I looked up the white pages and I found a lady calling herself, her business was called Feng Shui Solutions. So I called her up and I'm still in touch with her today. And ironically, she was Italian.
Wow.
But she was very intuitive. So we spoke on the phone, and she could already pick up my energy over the phone. She said, I'll come over. So I was in my 20s in those days, and she came across, and she had a look around the place. And then she pointed out some very interesting things that we could all see. So my mother is, I can show her photo later, very attractive. And so she had mirrors all around the apartment. So I grew up with like 12 mirrors over 2 floors, you know.
Oh, wow.
So then my mother had this really big mirror reflecting the bed, the marriage bed. And then she put the marriage bed directly under a beam. So the Italian lady said, look, the beam splits the marriage bed in half, and the mirror reflects the bad marriage. So your parents got divorced when they moved in here. And then it was a 2-story apartment, and with Feng Shui principles, the northwest sector of the house, of any property is associated with the father. So in this property, in the northwest, in the ground floor, was actually a laundry room, and upstairs was a bathroom, toilet. So she said, oh, after your father moved in, his business went down. And I was like, oh, that's also true. And then finally, we had this dining room that was overlooking the river. And the wind was always swirling, because if you lived in Australia, it's a very windy, harsh place. And she said, oh, this place, even though the dining room had a very good view, she says the energy is very unsettling. And she said that a lot of arguments have happened here. And there were 6 members in my family, so 4 kids and 2 parents. And I remembered every possible combination of family member had argued in that exact spot. So when she left the property, I felt really embarrassed because, you know, she's Italian, I'm Chinese ethnicity
yeah,
and
you
origin.
should know it by default.
Yeah, I mean, she
right.
knew more
yeah,
about my
that's
culture than I did. So that summer in Australia, so it was like December 1997, that was the peak of the publishing industry in English and other European languages about Feng Shui. So I started reading every single book I could find in English about Feng Shui. And I was in journalism school. So during the school year, I would give the same book to my Australian classmates. And of course, the level of English is the same. But then I realized that I was able to understand the book a lot better than they could. I could understand the principles a lot better. So I was like, oh, okay. I ended up like, you know, getting a feel for it. And that was 2 years in journalism school. And then when I graduated, for various reasons, I couldn't find work in Australia because I don't have an Australian accent. And I couldn't find work in Singapore because I didn't serve in the military, and I can't find work in Malaysia because I don't speak Malay. And so I fell through the cracks everywhere. And obviously I couldn't find work in Hong Kong because in those days I'm not from Hong Kong. I'm from Singapore. And so what happened was I realized that I didn't want to go back to work as a doctor, and I couldn't find any breakthrough in journalism. And I was like, okay, you know something? Maybe I could give Feng Shui a shot because I was more bilingual than most people in the industry because, you know, I could speak Mandarin better than the Westerners who want to learn Feng Shui, and I can speak English better than the Chinese masters. So I kind of found my own
in between,
niche.
yeah.
I was right in between because I grew up in Singapore, so I can speak English and Mandarin. And then in 2000, so before I came to Dubai, I did a 2-year apprenticeship in Taiwan, where I followed a Feng Shui master for 2 years. And in the morning, I would go to university to improve my level of Mandarin because I left Singapore when I was 14. So my language was at junior high rather
So do
than
you think
university.
Mandarin is a compulsory for the knowledge of Feng Shui, or if you
This is
you want to master it?
This is a very sensitive question because a lot of my European Western colleagues, Russian included, they get very upset about this question. Sadly, it is an advantage to be able to speak Mandarin and to know the culture. It is definitely an advantage in this industry. However, for Westerners who don't really want to learn Mandarin, or it's a bit late for them to learn Mandarin, if you find a good teacher in the industry, that's also one way forward. But of course, you have to establish a good teacher-student relationship and must have karma with that teacher as well.
So you're in Taiwan, you practice with a well-known master
Correct,
for
yes.
2 years.
Yes.
And then how did you end up in the Middle East?
So they did my astrology chart in those days. I still remembered there was this man who could read auras. He was a very amazing man, and he passed away around 20 years ago now. And he was Mr. Chan. He was Master Chan, and he was the Feng Shui master for the wealthiest man in Hong Kong, or some tycoons in Hong Kong. And my father and him had a good relationship, and he could read auras. And he told my father not to worry about me because he says a lot of people will be lining up outside my door asking for my advice in future. But he also said that I needed time to develop. And so when I finished in Taiwan, I was still very young, and in my late 20s and early 30s, and they said that it wasn't my time yet. So I ended up spending a year in Indonesia, in Surabaya, where I was trying to study one of my father's friends. Unfortunately, he wasn't really that keen to teach me. So I was stuck in Indonesia in 2003 during the time of SARS. And this is another amazing story, another Italian now. And my Italian neighbor, I was living in a compound, and my Italian neighbor, she's an academic, and she had a friend from Italy who was visiting Surabaya, Indonesia for work. And we did an exchange. I read her Chinese astrology chart, and she read my Western astrology chart. And I only met her once. Her name's Michaela. I don't even know where she remembers me, but I remember her. And she read my chart, and she actually said, Western astrology. She said, Scorpio is in your career chart. Scorpio represents the Middle East. You need to go to Dubai for your career to start. And that was in December 2003. And that's a true story. You can just feel the energy.
It gives me a goosebumps.
It's a true story.
Yeah.
And at that time in my life, nothing was happening because my father was living in Hong Kong at that time before he passed. And I had my Cinderella days. He was married to a woman who really didn't care much for me. And I didn't want to live in Hong Kong. And I couldn't go back to live in Singapore because of the military issue, even though my mother lives there. And I didn't want to go back to live in Australia because it's a beautiful place, and I'm very grateful and thankful to Australia for my education.
But that's not based on your chart, so you...
No, it's too far
It's
from the rest of the
very
world.
far.
It's very far from the rest of the world. It's a beautiful place, don't get me wrong. But then it wasn't the life I wanted. So I listened to Michaela. I was like, what have I got to lose? What have I got to lose? Because I told myself, I heard about Dubai because in the old days, Singapore Airlines would stop in Dubai or Abu Dhabi or Dhahran on the way to London from Singapore. And I was like, what do I have to lose? And I had the attitude that, if I come to Dubai and I see it, and if I see it, and if it doesn't work out, I'll just have to go back to Hong Kong and live my life.
Yeah, exactly.
And I came, and I remember my father was very against the idea of me coming to Dubai in 2003, December, because if you go back and check, it was Ramadan. And he's like, nothing's going to happen there during Ramadan. But the moment the Eid finished, and I was like, okay, Hari Raya, we call it in Singapore, I said, I'm coming to Dubai. And I think I came to Dubai on the 3rd or the 4th of January 2004. And I took Singapore Airlines. So I flew Dubai, Singapore, and the only hotel I knew in those days was the Radisson in Deira. And that was where I stayed, and now
it's still there.
No, yeah, but it was the Intercontinental in those days. So I remember taking a taxi ride in the middle of the morning, because we arrived at like 2 or 3 in the morning, and the taxi driver drove me to the Intercontinental. I woke up in the morning after a few hours. I drew the curtains, I saw the creek, and I was like, I had a good feeling about Dubai. And that was in January 2004.
You've written dozens of books about Chinese
astrology, yes.
astrology,
And Feng Shui, yes.
About Feng Shui. How did it come about? Did it
Yes.
happen here? How
Yes, it did. Thank you. Because I interviewed for the main newspaper in Hong Kong in those days, and it's still the main English newspaper in Hong Kong. It's called the South China Morning Post, and they actually invited me. Sorry, I interviewed to write a Feng Shui column for them. And that was in 2003. But you see, astrologically speaking, Hong Kong's not good for me. So when I was in Hong Kong, nothing happened. And then when I came to Dubai in 2004, suddenly, towards the end of the year, I got called back for another interview. And in 2005, March, my first interview ran in the Hong Kong newspaper which I used to file in from Dubai. So this is before the social media days and all that. I would just file it in by email, and it was published in Hong Kong. And so I wrote the Feng Shui column from Dubai from 2005 to 2011.
How interesting.
Yeah, and that was the basis of my first book. So I could have bought a copy for you. I didn't know.
Yes, you should have in Russian.
In English. It's been translated into Spanish, and the German version is out now. And we're looking at the Italian and French versions.
I'll
now.
definitely read it.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
I mean, you've been around not only a lot of Feng Shui masters, but is there one specific lesson that you've learned over the years that you are still bringing with you, or that you think a lot about in your practice?
Okay, so my Chinese astrology teacher, she's still alive. Her name's Lily Chung. She's from Hong Kong.
I love her already.
Yeah, Lily Chung. It's a very, very, very sort of like snappy name. And she's from Hong Kong, but she's lived in San Francisco for 50 years now. She's 88.
Wow.
And the biggest lesson she's taught me is that you never stop learning. She started doing this full time. She was a banking analyst, a financial analyst, and she started practicing astrology and all this when she was 60. So
Wow.
she's shown me. I started studying it with her in 2009. Another Dubai connection. Here's going to give you goosebumps, goose pimples. 2009, I started studying with her. She was 72 then. And I went to see her this year. She's 88. So she's taught me that in our lifetime, the day you stop learning is the last day. You never stop learning. You can never say, I've learned everything there is about Feng Shui. I've learned everything there is about astrology. I'm done. It doesn't work like that. You learn from your practice. You learn from seeing clients. You learn from the examples. You never stop learning. So that's the biggest lesson I have for you. You never stop learning.
I think we can all take it on board. I think that's
for sure.
Many of your books explore connection between destiny, energy, and personal success.
Sure.
This is a very interesting subject. Do you really think that Feng Shui, metaphysics, can actually influence somebody? Like you said the story, but have you used examples throughout your career with people that you actually worked for that Feng Shui really affected their way of living and their success?
100%, because the Chinese believe that there are three influences in a person's life. So heavenly influence is what you're born with, the family that you grew up with, your family background, the country that you're born in. As my teacher Lily says, person born in the US is a lot more fortunate than somebody born in a developing country, wherever it is. So that's one aspect. And then the other aspect is your environment, and that's where Feng Shui comes in. So as I was telling a group of Dutch business school graduates back in the noughties, I said, if you're living next to a cemetery, and you're living next to a highway, and you're living next to a beautiful park, who's going to have a better environment to live in? And then the Dutch person said, well, hello, Prince William is able to afford living next to a park. But, for us, we can live next to a highway, we're lucky. So, yes, where you live, your environment is very important. That's where Feng Shui comes in. And the final thing, of course, is your own efforts.
I believe in astrology, and I believe in Feng Shui and flow, and my wife as well. The other day she got pissed at me because I had put the suitcase under the bed, and she was like, there is no flow, remove the suitcase. And I was like, okay.
Where's your wife from? I would like her already.
Same as me, Kurdish, Swedish. But
Okay.
she's
Well,
very...
she's right.
She's like, she doesn't want any bad energy or flow to be like under the bed, and it has to be a good circulation.
Exactly. That's why you don't buy furniture where you don't see the bottom. Like a sofa set that just goes straight to the floor.
What about the Japanese people? Like, they love their low furnitures.
Yeah, but there's always circulation underneath. It doesn't just contact
Directly
the floor
touch.
with nothing. That's bad.
So a mattress on the ground is bad.
Tatami, it's not necessarily bad because the Japanese keep it in a very clean way, but the Chinese would never sleep on the floor, no.
Okay, tell us a little bit. Like, how does someone, when they contact you, what do you do with the first thing that you go in? If they
How do
bring
you
you to a house,
translate it into design practices,
Well,
in other words?
okay, so when I first came to Dubai, my New Zealand friend who retired, sold the shop, retired, and moved back to New Zealand, she was running the Feng Shui shop in Dubai. So I was getting a lot of work through the Feng Shui shop back in Lamsi Plaza. And, people always wanted to improve their lives, either they want career promotion or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, but now I'm doing more astrology. So the top 3 questions I get are, when will I find love? The second question for women who are single or divorced or separated. And the second question I get is, when can I have kids? For women, young women who are trying to have kids. And the last question I get, in Russia especially, is, can you look at my chart and see whether I can do this professionally? And that one, you need to have some destiny to do it professionally. So those are the top 3 questions I get. But I get asked a lot about love and compatibility by women.
How do we see Feng Shui coming into all this, and how do you into all these fields? I would say.
Well, I think now, people are realizing more very important about quality of life. And, if you sleep well, if you're healthy, you keep yourself active. Longevity, etc. You sleep well, you're in a good mood, you're not depressed. Mental health is very important now. Back in my day in medical school, nobody spoke about mental health, but now we can all talk about it, which is very important. So I suppose, Feng Shui means that to live in a place where it has good feng shui, it means that you're sleeping well, you're happy, you're productive, you have a good relationship with your family members, parents and kids don't argue, husband and wife don't fight, that is what the good feng shui, and of course, the business went up, etc., etc. So this is a good story for you. So 2 of my Australian friends from journalism school didn't really believe in feng shui. Then they moved into these townhouses. And then the wife told me, she says, something? The last 3 couples have moved in, and we always hear them arguing in the kitchen. And then after a few months, they move out and they split. And it's the 3rd couple that's happened now. So obviously they realized that there was something very wrong with the unit next to them. Because it's not coincidence. How come 3, and it happened in Australia, how come 3 couples can move in, fight in the kitchen, and then my friends hear it, and then they split and they move out? So that was when they realized that Feng Shui is basically measuring the energy of your environment, quantifying it. And that's when they realized that something was wrong with the unit next to them.
How could we apply these principles? Let's say if you're just a person who is not, let's say, so much involved in design or not interested in Feng Shui, didn't read, what are the basic principles, the basic pillars that anybody can apply for just a healthy, happy life?
Well, let me teach you a trick. So when you move into a property, always be nosy, unless it's brand new. You need to find out the history of the property. So for example, when I'm in Asia and somebody's selling a property, you always say, what happened to the previous owners? And they'll say, they got a job promotion and they are migrating. Or, all the kids have grown up and they are downsizing and they are retiring.
Or like they left the apartment and they split up. They
won't tell you that. The real estate agent won't tell you that. The neighbors will tell you that. That's what I've learned. and I mean, it's sad that, some properties get foreclosed. And, it's very sad that, that people had financial issues when they moved there. But from a Feng Shui point of view, you don't want to have that financial issue. You don't want to take it on.
Of course.
So you need, I tell you, real estate agents are not really obliged to tell you that person went broke, but the neighbors always know. Neighbors are nosy. They always know what's happened.
And something else that you can think about, like, for example, is there specific rules of how the living room should be located or the bedroom?
So like your wife said, there shouldn't be anything under the bed. So the energy has to circulate. The bed should be against a wall, and you should be able to see who comes into the room. Like, you shouldn't be sleeping with your head pointing to the door, so you don't see who's coming into the room first. You don't want that. And you don't want to be sleeping in the middle of the room, right, with your bed hanging in the middle of the room. That's not going to work.
That's quite
either.
interesting, because that's a very modern and popular
layout.
to have the bed in the middle of the.
Yeah.
Well, without the backing, let's see how well you sleep.
So so if you have a back wall, even though it's in the center of the room, that should be okay.
That will be acceptable if
Okay.
you have a back wall. But if you're just marooned in the center of the room, it's not going to work. And you
Interesting.
shouldn't be putting your bed under a window. When I was at one stage, I was staying in a studio apartment in Hong Kong, and because there's no space in Hong Kong, I ended up sleeping under a big window, and I slept very badly.
So would you rather have that you don't see a person coming into the room, or the bed against the window under a window? Which one is better?
Oh, they're both bad. They're both bad. They're both equally bad. You need to anchor your bed against a wall, and you need to be across from the door. That's the main stuff. That's the main thing.
That's the basics. That's
the
core.
basics. And you do not want to have the toilet door opening into your bed when you're sleeping. So, for example, let's say you have an ensuite, and let's say your feet is pointing this way. You don't want the toilet door to be open into any part of your body. You need it to be away from the bed.
So my bedroom is against the wall, not under a window, and it's not close to the door of the toilet. It's quite good, but there is a corridor, so it doesn't really allow me to see who comes in.
There's a corridor. But do you face your bedroom door, or do you have your back to your bedroom door?
No, I face it.
Yeah, that's fine. If you face your bedroom door, that's fine. What I mean is that you can't see who comes in is that you have your back to the bedroom door.
Okay.
Then that's
Okay.
not good.
Okay.
Do you feel like there is a huge shift in the industry now, and so much fascination about Feng Shui and the whole, application of different techniques? And do you have a lot of clients lately asking for a Feng Shui tips? Setup before actually building a project, or while building, before
That's
moving
such a good
in,
question.
working on the layout?
Well, I mean, Dubai is catching up with Asia now, because I can tell you in Southeast Asia, be it Thailand or Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia to a certain extent, and Philippines, people will always consult with Feng Shui. Hong Kong, as you know, people will always consult with Feng Shui masters before they build a major project, because they know the benefits of Feng Shui.
I'm bringing you in next time, Jin.
Yeah, thank
for
you.
my
You're
next
very
clinic,
kind.
for
You're very
sure.
kind. But of course, politically, we have some problems, because you also asked me that in the questions. There's a lot of Chinese people, especially Chinese Christians, they feel that the Feng Shui is religion, and it's not. It's like acupuncture and Chinese medicine works on everyone, not just Buddhists or Taoists. So unfortunately, some of my contemporaries from school, they have confused culture and religion. So the big misconception is that Feng Shui is not religion. And it doesn't matter whether you believe in any
How would you
Asian-
define it?
Feng Shui is basically the art and science of quantifying your environment to ensure that it works for you. I mean, that's basically what it is. Chinese medicine looks at the energy within the body, the meridians and all that with acupuncture and all that. But Feng Shui is looking at the energy of the environment. It's applying Chinese medicine principles to the environment. That's what it is. That's all it is.
Right.
So yeah, it's not, so one of the biggest misconceptions is that it's to do with religion, and it's not.
What are the don'ts that no one should actually apply while working on design or architectural projects from the very beginning?
Odd-shaped places. So you don't want to live in a house which is rectangular.
How about Frank Gehry?
Sorry?
How about Frank Gehry's
Frank
projects?
Gehry. It's a bit, yeah, Frank, but
He's doing very well.
Yeah, but Frank, the Guggenheim, right? No.
Yeah.
The Guggenheim is not a residential building. The Guggenheim is a museum.
So
it's a
for museums,
building.
it's okay.
Yeah, it's a commercial building. But
for a personal
space. Do you
space.
want to live in an apartment that is circular? I don't think so. Because it's very unsettling. When I was living in Australia, there was a very famous building that was built like a water flask overlooking the park in my city, Perth. And it's a beautiful building. But the rooms were all like pieces of a pie. So how do you put the furniture, how do you put the bed against the wall when the wall is like a piece of a pie?
Right.
So literally the apartment was circular. You know, so you don't want to be living or working in a room that's triangular shape, for example. How can you focus in a room which is triangular?
Right.
You want
Okay,
to
so
have
odd shape.
That's my house.
Odd shapes.
My house is triangular.
You need to move out.
I'm moving
you
out.
need to
I'm
move
sure
out.
your room is not triangular.
No, my room is not triangular, but my living room and kitchen is a half part of a marquise. So I'm in the tip of the marquise, which is the I've made it into the dining area. So I actually have the tip of the marquise, and I designed the table in the same shape as the marquise. So it's also in triangle. And then I have the living room, which is more of a rectangular shape, and another rectangular shape, which is the kitchen.
So okay,
Yeah, rectangular is good. Rectangular is good. Yeah.
No odd shapes. What is the second principle? What is the second?
Well, we said that know the history of the place.
Know the history of the place.
That's important.
And if you can't get the history of the place,
Ask the neighbors.
That goes all back to us, the neighbors. And the third?
You want to have a place where it's bigger behind and smaller in front. So, for
Bigger
example,
behind,
this
smaller in front.
is the house, and this is the small garden in front, and then there's a big property. There's more garden at the back. You don't want to have a property with a lot of garden in front and nothing at the back,
Very interesting.
because it means that the next generation will suffer. Because if you have more, if you're less in front, so this generation's got this one, and then in the future, the children, your descendants will have more opportunities. But if you move it the other way, so this generation gets all the good luck here, and then the next generation doesn't have that much. So with this sort of principle, you want a property which is bigger and broader at the back, as opposed to one which is narrower at the back. Because if it narrows at the back, it means that the opportunities get less and less with time. But if it broadens at the back, it means that more opportunities will come.
Very interesting. How about circulation and lighting within the space?
You want to have, the bedroom obviously can't be too yang. You can't have the bedroom with bright lights, then you can't sleep. But of course, you want to have your office not too yin unless you're a portrait artist or something like that. Then you don't need that much light. So you need to have, you can't have too much light and you can't have too little light. So you have to balance it according to your needs.
Very interesting.
colors.
Colors.
Yeah,
Colors depends. So you can do this experiment. You can paint your bedroom wall red and see whether you sleep well.
I mean, I rather get it from a Feng Shui master than painting my wall and then I have to change it back again.
No, because the point of painting the bedroom red is the biggest example, because red is a very strong color. It's not really suitable for a bedroom, but it's great for restaurants. It's very yang. But so you need to, depending on the person's astrology chart and your personal preferences, but I would opt for soothing colors in the room and maybe more energetic colors in the living room.
Jin, what is wellness for you?
Wellness is being happy with your life. You're waking up in the morning, you got something to do, being able to sleep well at night because you got rid of all the negative energy. Of course, we all have stress in our life. And I think, wellness is when you have found a direction in life and something that you're passionate about that gets you up in the morning. Could be your children, could be your husband, could be your job, could be living in Dubai, could be traveling, etc. And I think a healthy mind is very important in wellness.
And do you feel that the whole environment and the Feng Shui principles can actually affect that and healthy mind and
100%, because you have some people, like I've asked some of my friends from school the question, what was the happiest place you ever lived in? What was the most stressful place you ever lived in? And all of us here, Dubai is a very transient place. People have moved a lot. So people will say, this apartment was just awful. The neighbors played loud music the whole time and the landlord increased the rent and I was so stressed and I lost my job. I had to move out. Or you could say, when I lived in this building when I was a student, I got along so well with my roommates. Our neighbors were so fun. They were the happiest days of my life. So you need to, remember, when the place... We have good memories and bad memories. So if the place you were happy and everything went well, obviously the Feng Shui was good. If the place was really stressful and you're sleeping badly and you had a major health issue or you split up with your marriage or your kids and you were fighting, then obviously the Feng Shui was bad.
I have one more question about the working environment, okay? And particularly about the space, let's say a podcast studio and a space where people can open up, a space where people can be productive, which is, again, a big part of, as you said, of our life, working. And in terms of a corporate layout, what would be your recommendations for the office wellness?
I've done a lot of corporate jobs over the years, and sadly, a lot of corporates were asking for open plan offices.
That's right. There's a lot of open plans. So
yeah, open plans you have to structure in such a way that people are sitting in a very harmonious fashion, and I don't believe that the management team or the most important people should be part of the open plan, because you need to have some authority and you need to have some power over your employees. So I would suggest that the important people should have their own officers. To have an open plan for everyone, that's a disaster. It's not going to work.
Oh, wow. Very interesting.
Yeah, because where's the privacy? Well, how can you make the major decisions? You need to go to a conference room, close the door, and talk. And then people can see you arguing in the conference room, whatever. But if the boss room gives him privacy, the manager's room gives him privacy, then that's very important. And I've done enough jobs over the years that sometimes important people should not be in an open plan.
Very interesting.
What about hotels and
Hospitalities.
sector?
Look at the turnover of the restaurant. If there's a very high turnover rate at that place, something's very wrong. When I first came to Dubai, I did a job, I shouldn't say where, but the person, the job, basically there was a pillar right in front of the main entrance of that restaurant. And I don't think that restaurant succeeded. But there were other issues as well, because I believe that this is more than 20 years ago already, so people don't even remember this place, which is good, because I don't want to be defamed. And I don't be defaming somebody. And basically, I understood that they poach the chefs. So, sometimes if you do things which are not so good, they will...
It
So
might
you should
affect
look at the
whole...
kitchen.
Not just the kitchen, the main entrance.
The main entrance.
Because with this restaurant that they had poached the talent from, you opened the business and there was a pillar right in front of it. It was one of the first jobs I did here in Dubai, in the UAE actually, to be even more specific. And I couldn't do much for them because they already chose a restaurant where you open to a pillar. And they just called me in trying to fix the problem. And of course, the pillar was structural. You can't knock down the pillar, can you? And if I had been advising a client, I would have said, never move in there in the first place. That's the reason. So yes.
But main door for everything.
For everything, your front door too.
Yeah.
So in the house, the three important things: front door, kitchen, bedroom. Those are the three most important things.
Front door, kitchen,
bedroom.
Bedroom.
Yeah. How you eat, how you enter the house.
What's a good way of eating? Tell us a little bit about the...
You do not want to be be able to see the toilet door or in the path of the toilet. Let's put it that way. That's not so good. You want to... The kitchen should not be visible. The stove, let's even be more specific, should not be visible when you open the front door. So if you open the front door, you see your stove, you're going to have weight issues.
Front door as in the main entrance?
Entrance of your unit, correct.
Okay.
Not the main entrance of the kitchen, the main entrance of your unit. You shouldn't be able to see it, the stove. Otherwise, you're going to have some weight issues, because you'll be looking at it and always thinking about food.
So if you have a layout and you're put in a position where either the dining table is viewing or seeing a part of a toilet or a restroom, or the living room, which one would you...
Toilets should be very subtly placed, the worst thing is you're eating and you can see the WC from where you're sitting. That's just...
Of course.
That's a no-no. You don't need to know anything about Feng Shui.
That's pretty bad. and also, in the old days in Singapore, they would have they had no space. So in the public housing, the toilet door opened into the kitchen. That was pretty awful too, So those are the real no-nos when it comes to the kitchen. Yeah.
Well, sadly, the time is, I mean,
It just flew.
It just
It
flew by
flew.
this 1 hour. In the end of each episode, we ask a question from our previous guest. And we had quite an interesting question for you.
Yes.
Do you feel the same passion for your work today as you did 10 years ago?
Oh, such a good question
Oh,
for you.
yeah,
I feel like,
yeah, obviously I do, because I mean, 10 years ago, I actually gave a talk about Feng Shui, I think 10 years ago, to interior designers somewhere in the Dubai Design District when it was just starting, probably in Business Bay, to some interior designers. And yeah, I mean, now that I've had more astrology experience, I'm able to advise people better. So yeah, the answer is yes, I'm still lucky. I have some wellness in my life. I'm not like dialing it in or phoning it in or like, oh God, here we go again, When you feel that way about anything, your job, your relationship, your family.
The Feng Shui is bad.
Yeah, no. It's just like, okay, you need a break. It's like, oh, here we go again, I've learned to listen to my instincts now. And if I had a good feeling about you guys, and I'm here, thank you. And
thank you.
I had a bad feeling about something else tonight, and I cut it off very quickly, but I can tell you off air later.
Yes.
And I don't want to deal with that. So now I listen to my instincts, because if you get a bad feeling about something and you try to make excuses for it,
Or cover it up.
then it's not going to work.
Where's Jin in 10 years?
I don't know. Well, there'll be more books, I hope, and I'm trying to get them translated in different languages.
What are you currently working on?
I've got a beginner's book about astrology right now that we're putting the finishing touches to, so that it shows people how to interpret astrology charts. But of course, it's quite technical. Then I'm stuck writing about astrology. Actually, it's something fun for you to know. When I first started teaching astrology, I would talk about certain celebrities. And now I realize that I have to read these biographies because, if I'm talking about, in the old days before she passed, Tina Turner, I need to know about her life. I cannot just, if I want to talk about Prince William, I need to keep up to date with what's happening
But also,
in his
you
life.
need to check the chart if you're accurate,
And then, yeah, and just like, the previous generation, because you are younger than me, the previous generation was talking about, like my teacher was always talking about JFK and Jackie Onassis, and I was just like, you can't just do that again. So I realized that my generation's idols are Madonna and Michael Jackson.
Completely different
And I can't. So in my new book, I'm looking at people who are born 1980 and after. Because, we have to look at people who will appeal to the next generation. As my French translator for my book said, people are not going to be interested in Paul McCartney in 10 years' time. Stella McCartney, maybe, but not Paul McCartney, Sorry, we love you, Sir Paul. But you know what I mean? We have to update our examples,
Yeah.
I have to keep it. So in 10 years' time...
You have to be relevant.
Yeah,
That's right.
I mean... For this generation, Billie Eilish is a big deal. Selena Gomez is a big deal. My 33-year-old...
Dua Lipa, thank you.
Dua Lipa, yes. My 33-year-old niece says, when she was young, she says, Uncle, she says, Justin Bieber's the only one from our age who's singing out there. That's why he's important to us. So I always remember what she said. Justin Bieber is very important to my niece's generation.
Yeah.
There you go. Yes.
This conversation can go on for
Forever.
days and days
Yes,
and
it can,
days.
it can,
We unfortunately need to wrap up. However, it's very important that we ask you also what would you want to ask the next coming guest. Like you would also have a question like the previous one had for you.
Which was how am I passionate about my job in 10 years' time?
What would be your question for our next guest?
What do you love about Dubai?
Actually, no one asked that question.
Yeah, that's a good
I
question.
can tell you what I love about Dubai, but what do you love about Dubai?
One thing that connects all the guests who's been here or sat with us is that we all love Dubai.
Correct. So So the question is, what do you love about Dubai?
Yeah. Thank you so
Excellent.
much
Thank
for
you
today.
so much.
Thank you for this conversation.
We're looking forward to read more books and
Definitely.
encourage everyone to go in and buy books.
And subscribe to Jin's page.
Yes, why
Yeah.
not?
And Design Pod if you guys haven't done that already. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
My
Thank you.
pleasure.